What's up? It's Matt Hill again. Ruthless Circle Radio, as I like to call it. Picking up where I left off last night when police come by for curfew check. So, last night I was, speaking on about the way we view the things portrayed on TV, like Rodney King or George Floyd or Breonna Taylor, versus the perspective of the people that have to live that life for real. You know what I mean? What's it appears in a Hollywood fashion to us is a stark reality for them. So you know what I mean? I use Rodney King a lot in my writings versus George Floyd, which was a sick and detestable act that we did. But the reason I use Rodney King was for a couple of reasons. One of them is if we would have took Rodney King serious, if we would have tried to place ourselves in another people's shoes and seen through their light, looked where they come from for 400 years, maybe George Floyd wouldn't have happened. Maybe Trayvon Martin wouldn't have happened. Maybe Breonna Taylor wouldn't have happened. But we don't. We want to see it through our little white privileged rose-colored glasses. That's George Floyd. It's I can't breathe. We like marketing things as white people. You know what I mean? The African American has been a market piece for 400 years in this country. I wrote a little deal once. It's if we can't market the African American, we have no use for him. We either have to market him as the rap star or the hood villain. You know what I mean? It's the basketball star or the hood villain. You know what I mean? And if we can't market him, then we have no use for him. If we can't make profit off of something like Black Lives Matter, we have no use for him. Black Lives Matters is not, I don't care if it's a black-owned company or not. It's white people. It's like Snoop Doggy Dogg said, I hang out with kidnappers and jackers. I make my money off you crackers. You know what I mean? It is to market to the white people. I can't breathe has become a slogan. We don't understand what that slogan is. It's not a slogan. It's a reality. Dr. King wrote in 1963 that 20 million of my Negro brothers and sisters are suffocating in an airtight cage of poverty in the midst of an affluent society. That poverty don't choke them out as much as being in the midst of that affluent society. I see the things that my ancestors built. Let me back this up real quick. And they built that affluent society. Our wealth of this nation was built upon the Industrial Revolution. In order to have industry, you must have raw materials. Without those raw materials at the cheapest price, you have no industry. It was African Americans who grew the raw materials, the tobacco, the cotton, the rice, the coal. Everything to fuel the Industrial Revolution was fueled by black power, the enslaved African. So the entire wealth of this nation falls on the backs of the African Americans. They say, well, the North wasn't slave-owning states. Well, you're correct in that. But they made their profit off the slave. They made their profit off the African American. That tobacco, them cigarettes were sold in New York. The clothing and the goods that come from that cotton, the food that filled children's bellies from the rice fields in southern Arkansas and Louisiana, those were farmed by African Americans. That land was plowed by the African Americans. The cotton and them sweet potatoes were picked by the African Americans. We not only put the raw fuels, they are the original migrant worker. They are the original unpaid farmer in this country. They grew this nation. This nation is deeply rooted in the roots of Africa. Not only are we genetically African, because Africa is the cradle of life. That means we were born from a black womb. We all have black DNA in us. But this nation grew from the roots of Africa. We don't realize how much culture we have stolen from them, how many traditions we have stolen from them and adapted as our own. Music and art and food and all of that. Those are all products of Africa. Those are all products of black power. This nation has grew more on black power than it has anything else. Black power has led to more liberty in this country for more people than any other thing. Only thing that comes close to it would be the first Army, George Washington's armies and stuff. And not even they can compete because they had guns. Yeah, they was a poor ragtag army, but they still had firearms and backing from other countries. The African Americans, they bear two nationalities, African and American, yet they get no respect from either. They're accepted by neither. The battles and strides they made to get the Constitution amended on many, many fronts for many, many people, many, many races in this country. They didn't do so with backing from France. They didn't do so with backing from the fellow people in the country. They did it with brotherhood between African Americans, because that's the only people that ride with them. You know, you sprinkle a few white people in the Million-Man March, doesn't make it a mixed congregation. That means it was still completely African American. Like I said about the penitentiary system, you take a pepper shaker and you put a few grains of salt in there, you still have a pepper shaker. You don't have a salt shaker. You don't have a mixed shaker. You won't never taste that salt. You'll only taste that black pepper. So, you know, it's the North. It's where the raw materials went to. So though they didn't allow the African American in their communities and didn't allow slavery in their laws, their wealth was still built upon the backs of the African Americans in the impoverished South. You see, they profited most heavily from it. You know, the South was an impoverished place except for the plantation masters, you know what I mean? So they were the only ones making any real profit in the South. The real profit was to the people of the North, where the African Americans weren't even allowed to refine the products. They were forced to farm and you know, grow and cultivate and produce. So, you know, they worked for free so the white man could work for good pay. You know what I mean? So it's the North is just as guilty as the South, even though on paper it looks like they were a more righteous people. They were not. It was the North that should have stood up beforehand. You know what I mean? Think we wouldn't have had to fight the Civil War. We could have ended slavery real easy if the North really didn't believe in the enslavement of the African people. All they would have to do is, we're not going to buy no more cotton from y'all. We're not going to buy no more rice from y'all. We're not going to buy no more sweet potatoes or coal from y'all. We're going to boycott these slave-grown goods. End of a slavery without war and bloodshed. You know, Harriet Tubman said, let me see if I can find it real quick. God won't let Master Lincoln beat the South until he has done the right thing. Master Lincoln, he's a great man, and I'm a poor Negro, but this Negro can tell Master Lincoln how to save money and young men. He could do it by setting the Negroes free. We didn't need to go to war. War is just more money. Just more money. When an economy's down, you pull it out by war. So, you know what I mean? It's just like the prison industrial complex, the military industrial complex go hand in hand. So, you set the Negro free. I'm but a poor Negro. And notice that she calls him Master Lincoln. You know, I read this in prison. No, I take it back. It was right when I got in the Oxford House here in drug court. I'd read that about Harriet Tubman. She calls him Master Lincoln. Not President Lincoln, not the great emancipator, Master Lincoln. So what do the African Americans really look at somebody like Lincoln as? Do they look at him as the great emancipator? No. They call him Master Lincoln. He was nothing but the plantation master. What's the plantation? Well, the master plantation of the United States of America, where it's we the people, we the brown people, we the white people, we the native people, we the people of liberty. Why, you nothing but the slaves. You either fill our cotton fields or you fill our penitentiaries. If we can't market you, we got no use for you, because we don't look at you as humans, but marketing. Look at the prison industrial complex, which goes hand in hand with the military industrial complex. We don't understand that these weapons that the military industrial complex put forth, before they was ever used after 9/11 in the war on terror, they've been being implemented against the African American for decades. Those weapons are being implemented in our impoverished African American neighborhoods that have grossly and unchecked. So you know what I mean. We think in our white minds, because we refuse to wipe the white privilege from our face, the smoke of white privilege that looks like the smoke of equality. We've really disguised it as that, but it's far from that. It's white privilege, and it allows us to be blind to the injustices we let occur. When we use the war on terror, for say, to take our liberties at home, you know what I mean. The people over there fighting in Iraq and Afghanistan, those battles they losing. If they're doing it for our liberty, they're losing, because we keep losing liberty the longer we fight these wars over there. You understand? We don't see it as much. Dr. King wrote about, the two types of laws, the unjust laws and unjust laws and just laws and stuff, unjust laws, there's two types of them too, you know what I mean? There's ones that we force upon the minority that we choose not to do ourselves, and others that we do understand and we perpetuate in and we obey, but we don't understand it blocks others in their pursuit of happiness. It affects their liberty in a negative way, you know what I mean? So either way, they're unjust. So as we surrender some of our liberties to things like the Patriot Act and the National Defense Act, because we want to be obedient in much of our white society, we don't understand that those laws are really devious methods in enslaving the African Americans even farther. It justifies what we've been doing to them. See, as we bring more attention to the African American Holocaust and the liberties we take from them, well, all of a sudden for 300 something years, we didn't need no paperwork to take our liberties out upon these people. We openly accepted it. So as the light gets shown on it more, we then start having to devise laws and legalize the injustices, something we didn't have to do. We could just go unchecked on these people for a long time. So, things like 9/11 look like, well, we're keeping you safe from the terrorists. Like I was saying last night, I watched a deal on OETA, where in Newark, New Jersey, an African American gained access inside the police department. Well, there's a profiling of who they could profile under the Patriot Act and such. You know what I mean? You didn't see Osama bin Laden. You seen O'Shea Jackson. You know what I mean? You seen a young African American. You seen a Trayvon Martin, little sag in the pants. Flat brim hat on, hoodie on. Not a turban and not an AK-47, just a young black African American dressed in their native culture. So we give the appearance in the media that these laws and stuff are to keep us safe from third world countries that we can't see. Like John Lewis said, I can't justify killing a people we can't see. Well, same goes here. We don't look into the poor neighborhoods, into the impoverished African American neighborhoods. Like Malcolm X said in 1963, it's always the Negro that's segregated, never the white man. We expect them to come into our society and their culture and adapt to our ways. We can mock and take from them and rub in their face. We can put our Compton hats on, you know what I mean? We can put our gang rags in our back pocket. We can say homie and cuz and all that. We can mock it and be accepted in our own society. But when they come into our society, practicing the culture that derived from them, well, then they are harshly judged for it. National statistics say it's about 14% harsher sentencing for the African American than even the Latino for the exact same crime. How they do this? Well, they do this with gang enhancements. It's not just the color of the skin. You know what I mean? You're automatically a terrorist, a gang member. You know what I mean? I said one of my dad's best friends was one of the original 8 members of the Oklahoma chapter of the Mongols. It was a big deal back in 1981 and stuff. You know what I mean? He was part of it when they made it a federal felony to wear the Mongols cut. Well, that white privilege took us to the Supreme Court, and is no longer a felony for a white man to wear a Mongols emblem, a Mongols cut. You know what I mean? But it's still a felony for a black man to carry a blue or a red handkerchief. That's not always distributed back to the white folk. It always is, because the statistics show it. When 14% harsher sentencing of even the Latino, those are from the gang enhancements. We don't understand that. We don't understand the police force in the neighborhood of the black community is not the same as the white community. The war on drugs for us white folks, even in the more impoverished white neighborhoods, isn't the same as it is for the black folks in the black neighborhoods. They got a different army, different set of rules that they practice. The war that they fight for, the war on drugs, looks just like Iraq or Afghanistan. They got PTSD like you wouldn't believe. There's been no justice, no peace for them, you know. It's always the Negro that's segregated. We never look in through their eyes. So back to what I was getting at, you know, when we see Rodney King, we see a gross misuse of police power. You know what I mean? Police brutality. Yeah, that's wrong. We shouldn't have done that. But, you know, it happens. It happens this way. We don't understand. We see what looks like police brutality. They ain't even seeing the guns and the badges on these people. They see 4 white crackers whipping a field Negro the way they've been doing for 400 years. Man, it's hard to see that. You know what I mean? We don't get treated like that. People like me in my cellie here, you know, he's done some penitentiary time and he's white. But we're the minority in the penitentiary. We're around 7% of the prison population in this country, yet we make up for almost 70% of the U.S. population. The African American makes up from, on average, in the past decade, around 70% of the prison population. Yet they make up for only 14% of the U.S. population. You know what I mean? There's no equality until those numbers equalize out. You know what I mean? If the justice system, the scales of justice, we weigh in the justice system. So if the white man at 68% only makes up for 7% of the prison population, and African Americans make up for 14% of the U.S. population, yet make up for up at times 90% of the prison population, we get this much justice and they get none. Our justice far outweighs them. Until the scales of justice equalize, then we can't put forth equality. We must first put forth justice, like here in the state of Oklahoma. Some things have transpired over the past couple of years that have brought a shining light into the problem we have in the criminal justice system, especially pertaining to the war on drugs. Who gets the first taste of those liberties? Is it the African American who suffered the greatest injustice of these, or is it the white man? This drug court program, take for instance, there's around 1,000, 1,200, I forget how many, but close to 1,000, you know what I mean. And there's maybe 2, 3 African Americans in the entire program. But you go to the penitentiary system and it's a predominantly African American, you know. This shining light, we put a white face upon a black problem, we get the first taste of justice. Rosa Parks refused to stand up for the white man and said, nah, I ain't taking this shit no more, you know what I mean. Brought worldwide recognition to this problem back in 1955, you know what I mean. Now African Americans can sit anywhere they want on the public bus, but on the bus of liberty they're still moved to the back of the bus, even though they have internationalized Rosa Parks and being moved to the back of the bus. In 2021, they're still being moved to the back of the bus of liberty. When liberty gets distributed, when justice gets distributed upon the war on drugs, it's not these people that's made up for oftentimes 90% of the prison population and those most greatly affected by the war on drugs. They don't get the first taste, so they're still behind the fences. Their drugs that we drop upon, crack cocaine upon their society, especially here, I can say for sure in the state of Oklahoma, it's still a Class A felony. While methamphetamines is now a misdemeanor. Methamphetamines is a white drug. We bring a white cure for a black problem. So when they release 2,500 people from prison, you watch almost 2,397 white folks walk out and 3 black folks. It should be the other way around. That just makes the scales go higher and higher. More justice on the white man, less on here. I'll be honest with you. I want to see more of us white folks, if we're going to do it the way we're doing it and not just legalize drugs like we should, because we should have the right to pursue our own happiness. But I want to see these Oxford houses, these veterans courts, because those are the veterans, not just of the war on drugs, but the war on liberty, because the battles they have fought with no help from the white man or the brown man or the red man or the Asian man. It's amended the Constitution on many occasions that's brought liberty to many of us. Real soldiers of liberty. So, I would like to see these Oxford houses, these veterans courts, these alternative court programs, these community sentences need to go to the communities most affected by these unjust wars like the war on drugs. Let us sit at the back of the bus for once. Let us feel behind the fence and behind the walls of the penitentiary system. Let's say we are not superior and deserve these rights first. Sit down in your penitentiary cell as a white man and say, no, let my brother go free first. Let him have an Oxford house. Let him have an opportunity. Insert him in a community where you got things like job deployment centers and training centers and all that. They don't have that. Their return rate to the penitentiary is astounding. They don't have the necessary tools needed to stay out of prison. When they get out of prison, they have to go right back to the stove, cracking that rock up to feed their children. You know what I mean? We were speaking in class the other day about there was a guy from California who was talking about the 3-strike rule. They call it, career criminal, career felon. What we don't understand in these predominantly black areas, there is no career other than felon or rap star. Well, we don't even put the mic out there for them no more. What I mean, we're looking for the big schmoes and all, the MGKs, and then we're giving the white folk the black man's microphone. Even though Eric Wright put that microphone in his brothers and sisters' hands so that wouldn't happen. We're slowly stealing hip hop as our own fucking culture and our own music as we did rock and roll and the blues. So, we see it transpiring right in front of us and we don't stop it. So, they made it mainstream. They made it popular, just like they did country music. Elvis Presley did all black music. He was just a white face upon a black issue, you know what I mean? Same thing we're doing with the war on drugs. There's a couple people here that was watching this show called Orange is the New Black, and this is one of the things that caught my attention on it. It's got a bunch of white women and like 2 black women. Well, here's what happens. It's a fictional TV show, but that's what people like. We like fiction books and we like fiction. It invokes that thought in us. We watch Orange is the New Black and we say, that's my sister, that's my cousin, that's my niece. I relate to her. Look at that white woman. We need to fix that. We can't have this. Well, we put that white face upon it. White people get that first taste of justice. We still remain at the front of the bus, while the Negroes move to the back of the bus. So we justify it with marketing. Well, if we put it like it was, you white folks ain't gonna watch a bunch of black people, and it's a lie. Eric Wright showed us that. You hand the down and dirtiest Negro the microphone, the coolios, it takes a motherfucking thief. White folks buy it up. Stoop doggy dog, doggy style. We buy the Negro. We buy the African American culture in its rawest of forms. So don't tell me that if you put it like it really is, all them African queens that we put in the penitentiary, not white women, up on Orange is the New Black and all these incarceration nation type shows that bring justice to the war on drugs, but it brings it to the wrong set of people. We got to take our seat at the back of the bus. If we're going to say we're equals and we're brothers and sisters with these people, we made y'all sit on the back. We didn't even allow y'all on the bus for 300 years. Then we made you sit at the back of the bus. Then if another white man needed us, Rosa Parks wasn't sitting in the white section. That's a misconception many of us believe. She was sitting in the colored section, as they call it. And let me say this real quick. Like Kamala Harris, they say she's a woman of color. There's a difference between a woman of color and a person that has been judged as a colored woman. A colored woman is an African American queen, not a native woman, not even your ordinary black woman. A colored woman is somebody, like Dr. King said, our women haven't been given the proper respected titles of Mrs. and Ma'am as all other people have. A person that has been treated as a colored woman is not a woman of color. That is an NIGGR. Not in person, but that's what we perceive them as, and that's how they have been treated in society. They haven't been treated like the rest of the women in this world, you know what I mean, especially this country. So we got to watch between a woman of color and a colored woman. A colored woman has color within her soul. She knows the toils of what white avarice brings upon, what white privilege brings upon, where the woman of color does not. She has a jaded, rose-colored glasses that she looks through, where that screen, that smoke has been ripped from the face of the woman that has been treated as a colored woman. You got to be an African American to understand what being a colored person is. Not a person of color, but a colored person. There's a huge difference. There's a huge difference. Look at Barack Obama. He's exactly what Dr. King asked us not to do. We say he's the first black president. Well, we don't need a black president. We need an African American president, because a black president is being judged by the color of his skin, not the content of his character, as Dr. King asked us not to do of his descendants. I have a dream that one day my children won't be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. So what do we do with Obama? We judge that man by the color of his skin. I voted for a black man. Well, you didn't vote for an African American. That man was raised in Hawaii by a wealthy white woman in Catholic white schools. He wrote a book called A Dream of My Father. In it, he writes about he only met his father, I believe, like twice. You know, and his father was a black man, but not an African American. He was from Africa. There's a big difference there. The people of Africa and the people of Jamaica and places like that haven't received the same injustices as the African American. African American to me is not a race. It's a culture. It's a culture that was forged and formed in the heat of oppression that no other race or people or culture has ever experienced, especially for that extended period of time, you know. So we take Obama, we look on him, he's a black man. He appears on outwardly the same as Eric Wright, but he's not. Eric Wright was raised by an African American queen. He was raised by the descendants of the enslaved. They share the same skin color, but they don't share the same inner. Now, what happens when we do that? You got Obama, who was raised by a white woman, an affluent white woman, in an affluent land of Hawaii, in affluent white schools. They learn affluent white ways. So when they make it to somewhere like presidency, they might have gotten judged and voted in by the color of their skin, but their actions put forth what their inner character represents. Their inner character represents the environment they were brought up in. You know, Obamacare didn't take nothing to the men in Watts. You know what I mean? It didn't put no more cans of corn in the Compton pantries. You know what I mean? But it helped the white man out tremendously. Helped extend the military-industrial complex. You know what I mean? We voted that man in by the color of his skin and not the content of his character. We don't need the first black president. We need the first African American president. That's important. That's important because they know the evils of avarice. They know the greatest injustices, be it by race, be it by education, be it by economy, be it by welfare. Welfare is not food stamps. Welfare is one's well-being, health, and happiness. We got to solidify. We can't just keep giving people a fish. We got to give them a reservoir. We got to give them access to the pond of tools and opportunity that we all readily enjoy, yet deny other people in this country. If we just keep giving them a fish, that's the same as the slave master at the plantation just giving them the hog's asshole, the lower cuts of the hog. You'll eat what we tell you to eat. No, I want to do like you, white man. I want to eat what I want to eat. All you give us is crack and guns for us to be able to eat like that. So I'm going to use that. I'm going to be a career felon if felon's the only career in my neighborhood. Ice Cube said, all they give us is guns and drugs, then wonder why the fuck we thugs. Give us some careers, give us some industry, give us some of that justice you give the Native Americans. Look at the tobacco industry. We give many fruits of the tobacco industry to the Native American, which I love Native Americans. My ex-wife Kendria is a Native American. Her mother's a Native American. Got a lot of love for them. It's not their fault, but they received justice. We did steal their lands. You know what I'm saying? The African American did not. The African American owed to the Native American nothing. They should be tax exempt from paying any reparations to the Native American while they're being denied reparations themselves. Like I said, let's take the tobacco industry, for instance. The Native American said, this is the tobacco plant. It's good to smoke. This is the benefits of it. Well, the white man seen a way to market it. Well, was it the Native American that was bought and sold as farm equipment to grow that tobacco, to build these trillion-dollar industries of Philip J. Morris and R.J. Reynolds and Lord no. I was the African American that cultivated that land of Virginia and South Carolina and North Carolina to cultivate that tobacco, to build these trillion-dollar industries like the tobacco industry. Do they get benefit from it? No, there was a black man before George Floyd that was choked to death by 2 NYPD for selling Marlboros or Newports or something like that on the sidewalk without paying the taxes first. Choked to death. I can't breathe. Not a new thing. These men and women grew that tobacco, cultivated that land, cured that tobacco, and built these trillion-dollar industries for their descendants to be choked to death for trying to sell a couple squares on the street corner to feed his children with. Wasn't out there selling drugs. Now the Native American, they get tax-free in smoke shops and all that. Why don't they get the same thing? They grew that tobacco. The tobacco industry owes the African American community a lot of reparations, but here's the difference. We let Native Americans have the sovereignty. Well, you have to have that sovereignty in order to receive reparations. We deny them their sovereignty. We want to call them we the people when it benefits us, so we don't have to give them things like reparations. But when it doesn't benefit us, they're all of a sudden segregationists and haters. Malcolm X wasn't a segregationist. He didn't believe in segregation at all or separation. He believed in sovereignty. He's seen the same thing as I'm seeing, you know what I mean? It works for the Native Americans. We don't look at them as segregationist. Yet an African American asks for sovereignty as a segregationist. He's everything against MLK stood for. No, Malcolm X understood that we have to have our own sovereignty, that we've been taught, white people have been taught to hate the Negro, to hate the African American, that much of our culture is formulated around a superiority of white ways and white privilege. Well, to have a white privilege, you got to have an underprivilege, and the African American is the underprivileged from it. That sovereignty is a must, because only they can rebuild what we destroyed. They are the core foundation of who they are, as is the Native Americans. All we can do is supply our tools and our white privilege to them as we have the Native Americans, and let them build and grow to their own structure. We can't grow them to the white man. We can't grow them to the slave masters and the crackers that destroyed them. It'll never work. The only way to do it is to give them their sovereignty. Sovereignty is not a bad thing. It's a positive thing for the Native Americans, yet why do we look at it as a negative thing for the African Americans? For an African American, like I said, to have to pay taxes, to pay reparations to a Native American is an injustice. That's a white thing. Take the tax off the black man and double down on our tax, because we owe both those two races, or those two people. I don't even like calling people racist, so you know what I mean. Race to me is a competition. There's a winner and a loser in a race. So if we call groups of people races, we're competing. To competing, there's a superior and an inferior. So I don't like calling people races of people. You know what I mean? Well, let's divide by culture, not race. If we divide by culture, we unite by humanity. If we divide by race, then we all of a sudden have a competition. We can respect each other's cultures, but when we're taught that one race is different, that we got to see which race is better, you know what I mean? It becomes a competition. You got a winner and a loser, an inferior and a superior. So I don't like calling people racist. If we divide by race, it makes us racist. We're all the same people underneath. Like Too Short said, we're all the same color underneath. Our skin complexion may be different. Our hair texture may be different. The structure of our face may be slightly different. But we breathe through the same lungs. The same red blood pumps through all our veins. We all breathe the same oxygen. We all must consume the same type of nutrients in order to stay alive. We all have to drink water. We all the same underneath. We all the same color underneath. We're not different races of people. We're different cultures that have a slightly different outward appearance. If we divide by culture and not divide, then we unite as a people. We understand that we're all created equal. It's our cultures and our pursuit of happiness that makes us different. If we do it that way, we can learn to respect each other and learn from each culture, not steal from each culture, but learn to respect each culture. For the African Americans to teach us the strong points of black power. For a white man to allow that white privilege to overflow instead of pouring intolerance in the African American cup. Pour our white privilege in it so they may have a taste of freedom, of justice, as they watch us pour that white privilege into the cup of the Native American and the Latino and the Asian. Yet they've worked hardest for that drink, and they're still dying of thirst out there in that desert oasis of injustice that makes anger and a greater division and a greater gap. It becomes like the penitentiary system. 14% of the U.S. population makes up for over half of the penitentiary system in this country. The remaining 87% of the U.S. population, made up of 4 different races, make up for the other less than half of the penitentiary population. That makes it all 4 races versus them. That's a reality. We must unite as a people. They're always outcasts. It's always the Negro that's segregated, as Malcolm X said, and our penitentiary numbers show that. It's still a reality today, you know what I mean? Such a beautiful people and a beautiful culture. All they want is brotherhood. All they want to do is be we the people. We try to take the Constitution away from them. You don't want that Constitution. You don't want that Constitution, black man. A white slave owner wrote that. Boy, he didn't have you in mind. Who gives a fuck what they had in mind? Let's read the content of it. Let's take it in context. It's the most dangerous weapon to an oppressive people, an oppressive government, an oppressive system is that Constitution. Martin Luther King Jr. understood that. He said, those are my founding fathers. I don't give a fuck if they slave owners or not. Those are my founding fathers. They wrote down right here, all men are created equal. Not all white men or all brown men. All men are created equal. I don't give a fuck how many slaves they own. This is what they wrote down. They seen a better way They wanted change. They put forth the proper documents and the proper articulation to bring this change forth. He said, those are my founding fathers. My dream is deeply rooted in the American dream, the dream that all men are created equal. Martin Luther King Jr. said that. Those are my founding fathers. Don't give a fuck if they's white or slave owners or what. I like what they penned. It's the most dangerous weapon to a people that want to hold another people down with the illusion of equality before justice. So what do? We try to take that weapon. We'll give them guns and drugs and take the Constitution away from them. I write a lot about Eric Wright. He's one of my heroes. Like I said before, this is a little tribute to him. He was in the Wiccan and the Skulls and all that. He got the Lokes on, got the king's hat on. He was a king. He wasn't just the godfather of gangster rap. He's one of the godfathers of humanity. He united this country in a way that we can't even imagine. He's the reason this racist white boy's wearing a goddamn fucking Compton hat right now. It's got an African American hanging on his wall instead of George Washington, because he's more important to today than George Washington even. He's the reason I got a Rosa Parks tattoo on me. You know what I mean? All men are created equal and endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights. Among these rights are the rights to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. What makes us happy may not make them happy. To have to submit and come into our communities and take our degrees in order to perpetuate a future for themselves. To them, we don't understand that's a submission, that their culture is inferior to ours, as we sport these Compton hats and, our flat brim hats and our want to go to the club and bang that hip hop and all that, and steal from their culture yet not respect the people. Martin Luther King Jr. loved the Constitution. I wasn't saying he loved the founding fathers, but he loved the principles that they put forth. Not the ones we want to throw up, all they were slave owners. Well, they were. Abso-fucking-lutely they were. But they had a vision of a brighter future. They had a vision. We can't keep letting us sell it out. It's something ugly that we had no intention for the black man to be included in that. We keep putting that forth. We've taken that tool away because we've convinced these African Americans, you're right, I don't want no fucking document read by goddamn slave owners. What we do, we took the most important document away, the document that Martin Luther King Jr. and the Freedom Riders of the 1950s and 60s used to get the justice and the liberty, the very few that the African American has ever received, come from that Constitution, and the right to amend it, the right to peacefully protest, the right of freedom of speech, the right of freedom of press. Something this man right here understood, that the white man's gun did not shoot lead but shoot ink upon paper and let the brain spill of the way they fight war isn't putting bloodshed on the concrete. It's putting ink upon paper. Then that intellect spill upon that paper in a righteous form fueled by black power that brings righteous change. Black power brings a bright light to liberty. White light will blind you. Will keep things distorted, segregated, divided. Black power. What do you do when you go to a hotel room and they're looking for semen stains on the motherfucking comfort? You put a black light on to find the contaminants. Black light exposes white contaminants. Got a lot of love for Easy. He knew the power of the Constitution. We need that freedom of speech. We need that Constitution. We need the power of that pen. We need the right not to have to follow your philosophies. We need the right to stand up and protest and speak and say, I have a goddamn dream. To say, fuck the police. You motherfuckers are killing us, because if I can't grab this mic and say, fuck the police, look at what they're doing to us. Fuck the police because they're fucking us. Why do I want a bloodbath of cops dying in L.A.? Because these cops in L.A. want a bloodbath of young black men dying in L.A. That's why. If I can't say it, we can't fix it. Like I tell them down in this drug court program, you got to watch what you say, because they might go back to the judge. Oh, he's not getting the program, so we're going to sanction him to jail. We don't like what he says. Well, if I can't tell you my inner problems, my resentments, my issues in a peaceful manner with freedom of speech, then how can we ever fix the problem? If I can't stand up and say, fuck the police, these motherfuckers tell me to sit down and shut up, sit your black ass on the curb, killing us and maiming us at their women will. If I can't speak the truth, then we can never seek a resolution to the problems we face as African Americans. So what do we do as white men? We understand that. Those at the higher power that put forth this white supremacy understand that. Now, black man, you don't want that Constitution. Hell, that was wrote by slave owners. That was wrote by people that hated you. That can't do you no good. I know Martin Luther King Jr. used it to make sure you motherfuckers got freedom. We seen that. Now we want to take that Constitution away from you because you understand you need these guns. Well, the Native American picked the gun up, and we wiped them out to 1% of the population when they was once a mighty nation. The African Americans realized that the white man owns the gun manufacturers, the prison, and the military industrial complex. You can't fight the white man with the white man's weapons. Not the weapons that shoot lead. You got to do it with the ones that shoot ink, because that's the ones that enslaved them. They weren't enslaved with guns. They were enslaved with the ink pen. To reverse engineer that, you must pick the ink pen up. You must pick up the document that they used to enslave those people, and that's the Constitution of the United States of America. African Americans that may hear this podcast or whatever this is, understand that. Don't fall for the smoke that we white people put up, that you don't need that Constitution because a slave owner wrote it. You need that Constitution because that's what freed the slave. That Constitution is what gives you the right to speak, to say your piece like Eric Wright understood, like Martin Luther King Jr. understood. I'm going to stand up and say I have a dream. I'll take a bullet through the heart for it because that's my constitutional right as an American. That's what unites us as a people, is that Constitution and the principles of liberty. It's the only philosophy that any of us should follow, is the right of liberty, individual liberty, and one's pursuit of happiness. The only crimes in this world are those who want to take one's life, liberty, or pursuit of happiness from. If you can't speak, you can't be happy. If you can't write down your grievances, if you can't speak your grievances and be heard and have people stand up and protect you for that, you will never receive justice in this country. Do not let them take the Constitution away from you. It's the most important document ever penned in the history of mankind. They want to take that Constitution away from you, and they want to do it by convincing you that slave owners wrote it and it does not pertain to you. It does pertain to you because the founding document, the revolution wasn't fought over the Constitution. The Constitution was a byproduct of the Declaration of Independence that kicked the war off. The Declaration of Independence, like Martin Luther King Jr. said, highlights the American dream, that all men are created equal and endowed with certain unalienable rights. The Constitution solidifies those rights and gives us the proper tools. So if we can't openly deny them the Constitution, we turn them against the Constitution. A slave owner wrote that. They didn't like you. They looked at you as NIGGR. You don't want that Constitution because that might bring you liberty. That might bring you a sense of equality. You don't want that, black man. A white man wrote that. You don't think that Benjamin Franklin, who was wholly against slavery, that could write? Thomas Jefferson might have been a slave owner, but he wrote all men are created equal. Maybe he knew what he was doing was wrong. He was looking for a just means to find a just ends. Does it really matter? What matters is what Martin Luther King Jr. had found. I don't give a fuck if they slave owners or not. Those are my founding fathers, because somebody could pen something that beautiful had something more beautiful in mind. To take away the tool of the Constitution is to take away the voice of the black man, is to take away the pen from the black man, is to take away that black man's freedom of thought and expression, because that's what religion is one's inner beliefs. We always want to put religion as Christianity or Judaism or something like that. Religion is one's spiritual principles. My religion is now black power and feminism. I am a radical feminist, so you know what I mean. We're all born from the woman, so. Do not let them take that Constitution away from you. Women and African Americans both, because it's the most important thing there is. It's the greatest tool ever given to free a people. It's what was used to free the slaves and emancipate the slaves. It was what gave African Americans any rights that they have. It was the pen and the Constitution, not the gun and the want for war, but the Constitution in that same deeply rooted American dream that all men are created equal. If we're all realize that we're created equal, we become brothers and sisters. We took everything from the African American. That airtight cage of poverty takes all your humanity or humility away from you. Degrades you to that raw soul, like I was saying. When you take to that raw soul and all you have left is soul and black power, you realize we're all brothers and sisters in this. When they give us different opportunities and different rights, different pays and different all that, then we start dividing and segregating amongst that. The African Americans are known as brothers and sisters because they had all that taken away and they've been forced into this airtight cage of poverty where all they had was each other, and they realized we breathe through the same lungs. We both need that same can of motherfucking corn. We still need that drink of fresh water. All we got is each other. We're all the same underneath. Like Todd Shaw, Too Short said, we're all the same color underneath. Don't let them take that Constitution away from you. Don't let them take that Constitution away from you.